Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Grand Slams and Grand Prix podcast. I'm your host, Anais Lopez, and as you can tell, I'm in a new space today. I came back from college last week, so I'm home right now for the summer, and um, that was the first thing I did want to touch on. I apologize for no episode last week. I was a little bit all over the place with coming home and getting situated back at home and everything. So I just didn't have time to make an episode between coming home and my finals back at school before I got back here. But I am home now, so like I said, new location. Um, expect some guests coming on throughout the summer and just expect a lot of exciting things. As always, follow our Instagram and TikTok. They're the same on both platforms at GS and GP Podcast. And in this episode, I'm gonna have to recap the past, I think, 2 weeks because like I said, I didn't make an episode last week, so there's a lot to be said. And with that, this episode might be a little bit longer, but we're just gonna get straight into it so that we can use all the time. Starting off with a recap of baseball, the Padres played a 3-game series against the Pittsburgh Pirates May 2nd to May 4th at PNC Park, which is out in Pittsburgh where I was. They swept that 3-game series against the Pirates, improving their record to 21-11, which it was at the time of the game. In game 1, the Padres won 9-4. The offense was really good in the late innings, scoring 3 runs in the 8th and 1 in the ninth to secure a 9-4 victory, like I said. Yeah, in game 2, the Padres won 2-1, so this one wasn't as dramatic as a win, but it was still a win. And it was a tight game, honestly. Manny Machado tied the score with a solo home run in the 7th inning after the Padres were down. And then the Padres took their lead in the ninth on a wild pitch by the Pirates' closing pitcher. And yeah, in game 3, the Padres had a shutout 4-0 game. Um, they brought up rookie pitcher Steven Kolek in his MLB debut, and he threw a 5 1/3, I think. Yeah, 5 1/3 shutout innings for the Padres, which was honestly really good for your MLB debut. And in that, he had 4 strikeouts, which is pretty good. And yeah, like I said, they swept that series, and that last game was a shutout, so that was good. And then after sweeping the Pirates, the Padres made their way over to New York where they took on the Yankees at Yankee Stadium um, from May 5th to May 7th. Um, I have a friend who's a Yankees fan and she was at those games, and I was so jealous because I really want to see my Padres again. But it's okay. Um, in game 1, Padres took game 1 on May 5th for a 4-3 game. The Yankees built a 3-0 lead after a 6 2/3 of a scoreless inning. And then the Padres rallied in the 8th inning against the Yankees bullpen, where players struggled. There were some players that struggled. Padres loaded the bases, and then Luke Weaver surrendered a 2-run home run double to Manny Machado, followed by a go-ahead RBI single from Xander Bogaerts, where the Padres bullpen ended up holding up that lead, and the Padres took that game. In game 2, though, that was not the case. There was a 12-3 victory for the Yankees, which is kind of insane. But the Yankees exploded with a 10-run 7th inning. There's something about the Yankees this year that just amazes me because every time I watch a game, they always have like some inning in some way where it like the number of runs that they get is just something that like is so insane to me because I'm like, what the heck? How did you guys do that? Because oh my gosh. Like it's just crazy. But they had a 10-run 7th inning, and yeah, it was a big rally for the team, and yeah, um, yeah. Game three, the Yankees took another win in the series, a 4-3 win this time in a 10-inning game. It was a tight game, though, that extended into extra innings. Like I said, it was a 10-inning game. Um, there were walk-off sacrifice flies in the 10th inning that secured the Yankees that victory. And yeah, Cody Bellinger and Trent Grisham each hit game tying home runs in the 7th and 8th innings, respectively. But besides that, that was kind of it for the Yankees series. Now, for what just happened, we have the Padres and Rockies series. The Padres took 2 out of the 3 games against the Colorado Rockies out in Coors Field in Colorado from May 9th to May 11th. In game one, the Padres built an 11-run lead, highlighted by 4 RBIs and a 3-run double in the third inning. The Rockies had a late rally in this game, but overall the Padres did come out on top for this 13-9 win. And then jumping over to game two, the Padres delivered a historic 21-0 blowout against the Rockies, making this the largest margin of victory in Padres franchise history. And I know I was just talking about the Yankees and like how their scores always look so insane, but that score from the Padres, oh yeah, that was for the faithful. That one was so good. And that game, like it felt like it kind of just kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. And it was just that's what I needed to see as a Padres fan. But yeah, Stephen Kulik pitched a complete shutout in his second major league start, which is insane. Like, hello. So, yeah, and historically, the offense tied a franchise record of 24 hits, which is freaking amazing. So, all around, I think that was just a pretty historic game. Um, Definitely one I will remember, and definitely one I think a lot of other Padres fans will remember. So, yeah. And then in game three, the Rockies snapped an 8 game losing streak with this 9-3 victory. And yeah, but lastly, we have the Padres and the Los Angeles Angels series that just took place at Petco Park from May 12th to May 14th. And in game one, the Angels ended up winning 9-5. They had a really great comeback in the ninth innings after 6 scoreless innings. Or wait, no, after they scored 6 to overturn a 5-3 deficit that they were down. Um, yeah, Tyler Ward, he hit a beautiful grand slam off Padres reliever Alec Jacob, making it his ninth home run of the season. And yeah, it was just a tough night for the Padres. I think that night it wasn't not a tough night, but I think the bullpen struggled a little bit. So that was definitely something that they needed to just watch. But they did come back in game two where they had a 6-4 victory and another historic game. Fernando Tatis Jr. Hit his first career walk-off home run with a 2-run homer in this game in the bottom of the ninth, leading the Padres to their 6-4 victory in this game. That was just, I was upstairs watching that game with my family, and I remember when Tatis hit that, all of us were kind of like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like, it's one of those things that you were just watching it and you were like, oh my God, yes, this is what we needed. But it was also just like, oh my God, wait, that was like kind of that was history. Like, that was Tatis's first career grand slam walk off. So, like, I don't know. It was cool to watch. So, yeah. But, they besides that, the Padres were trailing coming into the eighth inning in a 4-2 deficit, but they managed to tie the game in the eighth, and through a combination of walks, singles, wild pitches. They managed to tie that and come back in the ninth with the Tatis's walk off. Um, in game three, once again, the Padres took that win. Xander Bogaerts set the tone early with a 3-run homer in the first inning, putting the Padres um, to a 5-1 win and clinching this series against the Angels. The pitcher Randy Vasquez delivered a strong performance, allowing 1 run over 6 innings while striking out 5. And yeah, I mean, it was kind of just hit after hit for this game. So the bats were going, which is a good thing. So yeah. Jumping back 2 weeks though, I didn't get the chance to talk about F1 in Miami, which is probably one of like the craziest, like I wouldn't say the craziest races on the calendar, but it's one of the more exciting ones. And personally, I feel like the like US races are always pretty exciting just because they are in the US and like I don't know. I feel like US races are always kind of exciting. Miami is nothing short of that. Miami is always exciting. There's always something happening. And I didn't get to talk about it. It was also a sprint weekend, so there's a lot to talk about and cover. But starting out with the F1 in Miami, they were racing at Hard Rock Stadium and yeah, the sprint, so it was a sprint weekend, and what that means is that they, instead of two free practice sessions, they get one free practice qualifying for the sprint and on Saturday. And then after the sprint on Saturday, they do qualifying for the Grand Prix race on Sunday. So the sprint was on Saturday, and because of heavy rain, the race was delayed. I think like twice actually. And it had two formation laps behind the safety car before they called it a red flag. And when the sprint was allowed to go, it was shortened to 18 laps instead of I think the normal 25 that it is. So that was that. In the formation laps though, Charles Leclerc did crash and was not able to race in the sprint on Saturday, which is very unfortunate. But that was the conditions. Carlos Sainz retired after clipping the wall on lap 12 in the sprint. Fernando Alonso was taken out following a collision with Liam Lawson on lap 13. Wasn't anything too major, but it was still enough to make them retire the car to make sure it was good for Sunday's race. And in the end, Lando Norris took another win in Miami this year. He emerged victorious with that, leading a McLaren 1-2 finish ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri and Louis Hamilton securing third place for the Ferraris in that sprint. But, but, the sprint, that's not it. So, um, I think we all can, like, we know Charles is one of my favorites, but aside from Charles, I think I've said it before, but like I'm a very, very, very big Kimi Antonelli fan. I love Kimi, and in Miami, Kimi broke a record, and so Kimi became the youngest driver to secure a pole position in any Formula One sprint, in any Formula One format. Sorry, in any Formula One format at just 18 and 250 years, 18 years and 250 days old. Yeah. That is so crazy to me. Like, it is literally Kimi's rookie year, and he is over here breaking record after record after record. And I think that really just, like, it really just comes to show, like, Toto and Mercedes, they knew what they were doing when they were bringing Kimi up in replacement of Louis after he left. Like, I know in the documentary that just came out about Kimi, they talked about like how that decision came to be, but I genuinely think that like bringing Kimi up to F1 was probably one of the best things that like could have happened out of all the rookies. And like no hate to any of the other rookies cuz like I love them all. Like I think if you talk to anybody that I talk to, like they know I love all of the rookies. But it's something about Kimmy that he has something that the other rookies don't. And I think that that is being shown every time he like comes out on race weekend. Like he puts in the work, he does what he has to do, and like he gets it done. But he's not like cocky about it. He's not like in your face. Like it's a very humble, it's a very like, yeah, like, I'm 18, I'm a rookie, like, but I'm here. Like I'm gonna make a name for myself, and I think that is so like beautiful and so amazing. But yeah, that was the sprint. Like I said, the race was in Miami on May 4th at the Miami International Autodrome. It showcased a lot of McLaren's dominance, with Oscar Piastri leading a commanding 1-2 finish ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, and Piastri's victory making it his third consecutive win and extended his lead in the Drivers' Championship over his teammate by 16 points. Oscar started fourth, but quickly advanced, overtaking Max on lap 14 to seize the lead and maintained it for the rest of the race. He maintained a very strong pace throughout the race, though, and finished 4.6 seconds ahead of Lando, which is honestly a pretty big gap in F1 because normally it's like 1 second or like two, but a 4.6 gap is kind of big. Um, Lando recovered from an early setback where he dropped to sixth place after being forced off the track by Max in the start of the race. He battled back to secure his second place and contributed to McLaren's first double podium of the season. George Russell clinched third for Mercedes, though, fending off challenges and surviving a lot of the Red Bulls, like what the Red Bulls were throwing at what Red Bull, quote unquote, like in parentheses, Max Verstappen was throwing at him. Um, but despite Red Bull protesting his behavior under a virtual safety car, it was ultimately dismissed, and he ended up taking that P3. Max, though, despite starting from pole, finished fourth after being overtaken by Piastri, and he just struggled a lot with his tire degradation. So like that basically means like the wear of his tires wasn't the best, and so he struggled a lot with keeping his tires where they needed to be throughout the race. And then Alex Albon. Okay, I feel like Alex Albon is a driver that is so underrated. Like nobody talks about him as much as we should, but he achieved a season best in his fifth place for Williams in Miami. This is the same result he got in the Australian Grand Prix, but this is his season best. That's the best he's finished all season, and honestly, couldn't be any more happier for Alex. I love him, and his orange helmet was like probably one of the best things out of Miami this weekend, besides Lando's disco ball helmet and how blinding it was, and the Visa Cash Apps being pink. That was literally the highlight of my whole weekend. The Visa Cash App Racing Bulls team livery was pink this in Miami for the white peach Red Bull, and it was literally the best thing ever. I loved it so much. Like I would spot them on like this, like I would be watching the race and I'd spot the pink and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh." Anyways, despite that though, Ferrari did face a lot, not a lot, but they faced a few different issues. Louis finished in eighth and expressed a lot of frustration over the team's strategic decisions. He's been having it a little rough since his change to Ferrari, and I think that this is just following down that path. Charles finished seventh though, but mainly it was a lot of just um it just Louis is not satisfied at Ferrari. So yeah. But both Louis and Charles acknowledged that there is a need for improved communication within the team about strategic calls. So yeah, and team principal Fred Vasseur, he did agree with them and said that it would be something that they would be taking into account in further races. So we shall see what happens in Imola this weekend. But speaking of Imola this weekend, actually, I'll get there. Now, onto the predictions part of my podcast, which is honestly one of my favorite things. Um, Firstly, we have the Padres playing the Mariners. So the upcoming series between the two teams is scheduled for May 16th to May 18th at Petco Park. And it is going to be an exciting matchup, especially with this being the inaugural game to the Vetter Cup, which is a trophy introduced this year to honor the unique rivalry between the two teams. Um, but considering the Padres' home advantage in their pretty good offense, they have a slight edge in this series. However, the Mariners' strong pitching and recent momentum is something that a lot of people have been watching. So honestly, I say like I'm split for pretty 50-50 on this. Like I don't want to say that the Padres will take it because the Mariners have had a pretty good run so far, but I don't want to say the Mariners will take it because the Padres have a really good home record so far. So I feel like I'm split pretty evenly down the middle with obviously a little more lean to the Padres, but I'm pretty in the middle. I do think that it's going to be very close games, though. I don't think that we'll be seeing any 21-0 shutout games. Like, I think it'll be some pretty close games. Maybe a walk-off, but who knows? But yeah. Um, Following that, though, the Padres are set to face the Toronto Blue Jays in a three-game series at Rogers Center from May 20th to May 22nd. The Padres entered this series with a stronger offensive lineup and a more consistent pitching staff than the Blue Jays. However, the Blue Jays do have an advantage playing at home, and they do have powerful hitters like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on their team. But the outcome will likely come out of the performance of their pitchers and the ability of the team's bullpens to maintain the leads that they need and just overall do their jobs essentially. So, yeah. Um I feel like I know I say this every time, but I feel like the Padres are more like leaned to win this, but I do think that the Blue Jays have a pretty good chance too. I think if anything, it'll be the Blue Jays will win one game, but the Padres will win two, so they'll take this series. But I do think that it'll be very once again very close games. I don't think they will be shutout games. I don't think it'll be like huge gapped games. I think it'll be pretty close. Like if anything like a 5-3, 5-2 game maybe. But yeah. But hopping over back to F1, this week F1 is taking us to Imola, which is in Italy, for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, which is scheduled for Sunday, May 18th, and it is the first race of our three leg. Oh wait, it is the first race of our European leg, which also happens to be a triple header, comprising of I think it's Imola, Monaco, and then Barcelona are the next three races. But it promises to be a really pivotal race as it's the beginning of the European leg, like I said. Um, Going into this, Oscar enters Imola with very significant momentum after winning the past three races, which have been Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Miami. He's been having very consistent performances and honestly seems like probably the highest contender for this week's race. As always, it's like Oscar is starting to get the momentum of Max, and I think it was the 2022 season when Max was just winning back to back to back to back. I feel like that's the road that Oscar's heading down, and as much as like I don't want it to be that way because I kind of want some like exciting races, I'm okay with Oscar winning because he's a good driver and he is one of my favorite drivers, so yeah. Anyways, Lando Norris has demonstrated exceptional form at Imola, finishing on the podium of his past three performances there, and he has a competitive car this year, so I genuinely think he has a shot. But as always, I think him and Oscar are just going to be going back and forth as they have been this whole season so far. It's really just been the McLarens battling each other, so who knows, maybe Lando, but more Oscar. Um, Aside from that, Max Verstappen in Red Bull, he's currently trailing Oscar by 32 points in the driver championship standing, which is actually just like kind of crazy because I remember when it was the other way around last year. Excuse me. But Max currently trails Oscar by 32 points, and he honestly I feel like he poses the biggest threat to the McLarens just because of the experience he has and like the way he drives. I feel like he poses the biggest threat to the McLarens, but this weekend Red Bull has introduced some upgrades to their car because they have not been performing as well as they wish they would be this year, and I part of me thinks that's because the McLarens are just so powerful this year, and they have a really, really good car this year that is just nobody can really perform to the like extent of the McLarens this year, but the Red Bull can, and I think that it's just underperforming. So Red Bull's in a really sticky situation right now, especially with the talks of them firing Christian Horner as their team principal. I think that's a big thing going on right now too. So Red Bull is just all over the place right now. But hopping over to Mercedes, George Russell has been very consistent this season. And honestly, like, I didn't really see George as a threat coming into this season. Not a threat, but like, I didn't really see him as a contender coming into this season. But he's been proving himself wrong, like, proving me wrong. He's been proving himself. But he's been very consistent, securing 4 top 3 finishes in the 6 races we've had so far. And his performance in Imola could solidify his position in the championship standings and how much he is really willing to put in the fight for it. I think that he is trying to put up a really good fight. So I feel like Imola could be the place where we see things start to happen from Mercedes, especially George. But like I said, it is Imola, and we do have one Italian on the grid who also just happens to be our record breaking rookie. Um, Kimi, our 18-year-old rookie, has been very impressive in his debut season with becoming the youngest to lead a Grand Prix, to becoming the youngest pole sitter in all of F1 and like every F1 form. Like he's been breaking he's been breaking records. So I do think that this could be a weekend where we see something big from him because it is a home race for him. I feel like he's going to have that pressure on him that he wants to perform well because he knows that there's a little bit more meaning to do well at a home race than just any other race. So I feel like if it isn't Imola, then it's going to be in Monza, but I'm really hoping it's going to be this weekend in Imola because that would be huge. But he's achieved 5 top 6 finishes in just 6 races, which is insane. But like I said, it's his home race, so I really think he's just going to try and like ride that high of just being his home race and his rookie year that he's going to try and get something. So we'll see. But like I said before, I know that I said some stuff about car upgrades and some team things happening and some things happening within teams. So at McLaren, they're currently leading the championship, but they've made some recent upgrades that have improved their performance significantly, and I think we can all see that. But it's really just been making them the team to beat this year. I think coming in, a lot of like fans knew that McLaren was going to be the team to watch this year because of what they were doing at the end of last year. So I think they're definitely living up to that. Um, but hopping over to Red Bull, in response to the McLaren dominance, Red Bull has made major car upgrades for Imola, where they're hoping to close that performance gap between them and the McLarens. And like I said, um, Red Bull has been underperforming to what they would have wanted this year. And so with that came talks of Christian Horner, the team principal, being fired of or like taken out of his role because Red Bull is underperforming. So if we don't see something happening from the Red Bulls soon, I think that's going to affect the car they have, the team as a whole, team principals, drivers, everything. So we'll see where the Red Bulls take us. And the Ferraris, they need to figure it out, one, because it's just, I don't even know. Don't get me started. But after returning to Italy after a really challenging race in Miami for them, they're under a lot of pressure to perform well at their home Grand Prix. So Ferrari is an Italian team. Um, with being an Italian team, that means that in Italy, those are considered home races to the team. So the two races of Imola and Monza are considered home races, and the race this weekend being in Imola means that this is a home race for Ferrari, and it also means that the Tifosi, the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi are going to be out in full swing. They will be rooting for their team. They will be doing their um they'll have their candles set up, their shrines, they'll have everything. They will be rooting for the Ferraris this weekend. So we should see how that goes. But another thing that teams are talking about, Franco Colapinto is now in a seat at Alpine. He is replacing Jack Doohan for the next 5 races, and I'm really excited. Another Latino driver on the grid. I've been waiting for Franco to come back since last season. I thought he was gonna get a seat, but he didn't. But yeah, we're gonna have to watch Franco. But my predictions for Imola this weekend are Oscar in P1 as always. Um, I think George will take P2 and Max will take P3. Lando P4, Kimmy P5, and Charles P6. Um, yeah, but that's it for this episode.